The Seattle Seahawks just proved they can win the kind of game that ruins good teams. Bad weather, weird rhythm, early start, a spot where your legs feel heavy and your mind drifts, and they still walked out like nothing could touch them. Nobody wants to say it out loud yet, but this is starting to look like the team built to survive January. Not because they are flashy, because they are stubborn. They can play ugly, look off, and still take the game from you. But here is the twist. Seattle is doing it with a style that does not depend on perfect timing or perfect air. When the game gets messy, they lean into the fight and they make you carry it for 4 quarters. Sam Darnold does not have to throw a perfect game for them to control the night. He just has to stay steady and let the rest of the machine do its work. And when it is time to close, they have real finishers on both sides of the ball, the kind that make you feel the pressure even when the score is still close. The scary part is what nobody is talking about enough. The Seahawks are not surviving, they are wearing teams down on purpose. That tells you something deeper than one win. It tells you what they trust when everything tightens up. And if you want to understand why the league is starting to worry, you have to start with the weapon that makes all of this possible. The run game that keeps coming, even when you know it is coming, led by Kenneth Walker and Zach Charbonnet. But before we get into that, hit that like and subscribe button for more Seahawks and all the NFL content. Let's aim for 200 likes on this video. The Seattle Seahawks do not use the run like a backup plan. They use it like a slow squeeze on your nerves. It starts quiet, a few solid gains that do not look scary on the screen, but they feel heavy on the field. The defense keeps telling itself it is fine until it is not. And the moment you get impatient, the moment you start guessing, that is when Seattle takes the game and makes it theirs. This is where Kenneth Walker turns into a problem. He hits the crease, drops his pads, and keeps falling forward, so your best stop still becomes a small loss over time. Then Zach Charbonnet comes behind him with that same stubborn energy, and now every tackle feels like it costs you something. Against Carolina, the ground total climbed to 160 yards. And the big burst finally showed up, not by accident, but because the earlier carries had already softened the edges. One long run does not just add yards, it changes the mood. It makes the defense feel like it is late to everything. And here is the part that makes the rest of the league nervous. Once a defense starts cheating toward the run, the whole field tilts. Safeties creep down, corners start peeking, linebackers take one wrong step, and suddenly the pass game is not fighting tight windows anymore. That is when the pressure moves to the back end, and that is where the next part gets dangerous. Because the run game is what opens up clean throws for Sam Darnold to attack space with JSN, Cooper Kupp, Rashid Shaheed, and AJ Barner. The Seattle Seahawks have a sneaky way of turning your defense into a nervous mess. First, you start stepping forward just a little because you do not want to be the unit that gets pushed around all day. Then, your eyes start chasing the wrong thing. One beat late, one step inside, one glance into the backfield you cannot afford. The shocking part is how fast that tiny hesitation turns into space. And in the NFL, space is basically a gift. That is where Sam Darnold gets dangerous without even looking wild. He does not need to force hero throws when the defense is already leaning the wrong way. He just needs to take what opens, and he has the perfect set of weapons for that. JSN wins in the clean areas where a safety should be, but is not. Cooper Kupp finds the soft spot and sits down like he owns it. Rashid Shaheed makes corners back up just enough to keep them honest. And AJ Barner is the kind of quiet target that slips out and makes you pay when you forget about him for one snap. Now here is the problem. This is also where the whole season can swing on one decision. When the field starts opening, the temptation grows. You start thinking you can take the big shot every time. That is when a quarterback gets tested, not on talent, but on patience. And that leads straight into the next part, because the Seahawks can look unstoppable when Sam Darnold stays clean. But the moment he tries to fit a throw that is not there, the entire game can flip in 1 second. The Seattle Seahawks are terrifying for one reason that also scares their own fans. The whole thing can feel stable and unstable at the same time. That is the life with Sam Darnold. When he is calm, he looks like a grown man quarterback, moving the chains, taking the easy money, letting the run game and defense do the heavy lifting. Then one moment hits, a tight window, a red zone throw, and the heartbeat of the entire fan base changes in one snap. Carolina was the perfect example of that thin line. The conditions were rough, the rhythm was not clean, and Seattle did not need fireworks to win. They just needed smart football. Sam Darnold did enough to keep drives alive, then tried to get greedy in the end zone, and the ball ended up going the wrong way. An interception on a throw meant for JSN that never had to happen. That kind of mistake does not always lose you a regular season game. In the playoffs, it can end your season before you even get to halftime. And here's why the league should still be nervous. Seattle does not need Sam Darnold to be perfect, they just need him to stop gifting momentum. With the way the run game tilts coverages and the way the receivers win space, a clean and careful version of Sam Darnold is enough to beat almost anyone. The question is whether he can stay disciplined when the stress rises, because if he cannot, Seattle will need the other side of the ball to erase mistakes, and that is where the story turns into something nasty. Because this pass rush wave makes every quarterback feel hunted. The Seattle Seahawks do not just pressure quarterbacks, they wear them down mentally. The pocket can look clean for a split second, then it closes like a door that slams without warning. That is how you break a passer, not with one big hit, but with the feeling that every drop back is a risk. And when Seattle is at its best, you can see that fear show up in the feet, the rush throws, the eyes leaving the field too early. It starts with DeMarcus Lawrence because he sets the tone like a bully who never gets tired. He can win fast, he can swipe at the ball, and he turns normal plays into panic. Then the wave keeps coming, Boy Mayfair bringing speed off the edge, Uchenna Nwosu crashing lanes, and inside you have Leonard Williams and Byron Murphy walking blockers backward until the quarterback has nowhere to climb. Riley Mills flashes as that young interior energy who shows up when an offense thinks it can finally breathe. On paper, the sack count might not look like a horror movie every week, but the real damage is the constant hurry, the internal clock that gets shattered by the fourth quarter. And it gets worse when you remember what depth does in January. Fresh rushers late in games are a cheat code because the offense is tired and the protection is stressed. If Derek Hall is fully in the mix, that rotation gets even deeper, and the margin for error gets even smaller. Now think about what happens when a quarterback finally gets the ball out early just to survive, because that is where the next trap is waiting. The coverage behind the rush that turns rush decisions into takeaways. The Seattle Seahawks secondary plays like it is waiting for you to blink. A quarterback finally decides to get the ball out quick, thinking he found the safe answer. And that is when Seattle turns the throw into a mistake. That is the hidden danger, because the pass rush forces speed and the coverage punishes speed. So even smart game plans can feel useless once the game starts tightening. This is where Julian Love shows up like a thief. He is reading your eyes, sliding into the lane, and taking the ball the second you get careless. On the outside, Rick Woolen makes deep shots feel risky because his length takes away space that looks open at first glance. Then you have Devin Witherspoon, moving all over the place, blitzing one snap, driving on routes the next, always forcing the quarterback to hesitate. When injuries hit, Ty Okada plays with no fear and tackles like every snap matters. And Kobe Bryant brings the same edge when he is healthy enough to go. That is how you survive a long season. You do not need perfect health, you need real depth that does not collapse. And the middle of the field is just as nasty. Ernest Jones and Drake Thomas close downhill so fast that short. Throws feel like traps, not relief. Nick Emenwari blurs the line between safety and linebacker. One snap filling a run gap, the next snap running with a tight end like it is normal. That is why yards after catch die against Seattle, and why offenses start pressing for bigger plays than they really need. Which brings us back to the game that proved it, because Carolina walked into that trap and never found an escape once Seattle stopped playing flat. The Seattle Seahawks walked into a spot that ruins good teams, the kind of week where your emotions are still burning from the last game and your eyes are already drifting to the next one. Early start, bad weather, a Carolina team fighting for its season, and Seattle looked flat enough to make fans nervous. It felt like the exact setup for a slow disaster, stalled drives, messy plays, and that quiet fear that the trap is closing. Then something changed, not with a miracle, but with control, the kind that makes the other team feel smaller as the minutes pass. Once Seattle locked in, the game became a slow shutdown. The score ends at 27-10. But the real punch is how little air Carolina had to work with. Under 150 total yards, and on third down, 1 of 11, that is not just a bad day, that is a team getting squeezed until it cannot move. Seattle did not need to be perfect to do it. They just needed to keep stacking hits, keep forcing long downs, keep making every drive feel like it required magic. And the second half is where you felt Carolina stop attacking and start hoping. That is why this win matters more than a highlight reel. It shows Seattle can start slow, deal with weird conditions, and still win by 17 like it is normal. That is a playoff trait, because January games are rarely clean, and the teams that panic are the teams that go home. But here is the bigger question. Was that game just a tough road win, or is it part of a real run that is building towards something even louder? Because 6 straight wins changes how the whole conference sees you, and the next step is the test everyone has circled. The 49ers waiting to see if Seattle is ready to take the top of the NFC. The Seattle Seahawks are not chasing respect anymore. They are chasing control. 6 straight wins is not a vibe. It is a statement that keeps getting louder every week. People can argue about style, weather, or schedule, but they cannot argue with what it does to the standings and the pressure. When you are sitting on 13 wins and 3 losses, every opponent stops treating you like a fun story and starts treating you like a threat that can steal their season. But here's the twist. The biggest game is not only about bragging rights, it is about the door it can open. The number 1 seed and the first round bye are not just perks. They are protection from one bad night, one weird bounce, one early punch that can end a run too. Soon. That is why this next matchup feels like it is carrying more weight than a normal week, because one win can tilt the entire path, and one slip can drag you into the kind of playoff road nobody wants. Now comes the test everybody has circled, the San Francisco 49ers. Brock Purdy is the kind of quarterback who can stay calm and keep you honest. And when Christian McCaffrey starts finding space, the whole game speeds up. You already know what Deebo Samuel can do once he gets the ball, and Brandon Ayuk can turn one clean route into panic. Then on defense it gets colder, because Nick Bosa can wreck timing by himself, and Fred Warner can erase the throws you thought were safe. So the question is simple. If Seattle wins this one, what does it tell the whole NFC about who is really built to finish the job?